In today's video, we are doing the ultimate Canon zoom lens comparison. We have the newer but cheaper budget zoom lens versus the much older but professional grade fancier lens. Which lens will win?
Okay, so the first lens is this old school Canon 70 to 200. I believe this is the first edition. So this is like, we're talking like 2007 here, 2008, like my father-in-law got this a long time ago. It is an L lens. It has IS, so image stabilization will be used for both. But again, it's an L lens, so you know it's premium glass, very heavy, very expensive. This is probably like $2,000, right, just for this. And the images, they are very clear, but we'll see, like, is it worth it? Okay, and then the second lens is a much newer one. This one I just got this year, and this was made maybe, I don't know, it came out like 2016, something like that, so much newer. Okay, it is the Canon 70 to 300. All right, and this also has image stabilization. So I will use that for both. For pictures from both, I will use image stabilization. And it has this new focus technology called Nano USM, which is kind of cool because it's super fast. And it has this cool digital readout also that comes on when you attach it to the camera and turn on the camera. Okay, and the same camera as always, the Canon EOS 5D Mark II. So pretty old camera, but I think still very good. Very good quality camera, even though it's over 10 years old. The settings for these photos, the shutter speed will be 1/1000th, and the f-stop will be on f4. And then the ISO was kind of on auto because this lens at 200 millimeters doesn't go to f4, only goes to 5.6. Whereas this lens, you can get f4 out of it. So it'll be not exactly the same, but I'll try to keep it pretty close to these settings. Okay, so here's the subject. It's gonna be this dead end sign that's kind of right by my house. And it does have a little detail on it. You can see like a little discoloration of the paint here. You can see there's like a little scuff mark here. All right, also a little scuff mark here. So that'll kind of be like, you know, some detail that we'll be looking for. It's kind of the benchmark of how clear these photos will be. I'm facing north. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so the sun is kind of behind me. So lighting's great, you know, kind of right here. I'm gonna stand like 10 meters back. I'm moving back. I'm gonna stand about 10 meters back and do at the 70 millimeter mark focal length, and then I'll go about 20 meters back and do 200 millimeter. And let's see how they come out. All right, so here we go with the photos, and we are starting with the old lens. So that's the L lens, and this is standing 10 meters away. All right, so you can look at the settings, look at the shutter speed, and now here, let's look at the newer lens. And pretty much the same settings, except the ISO is a little bit lower. I don't know, maybe like a cloud moved away or something, it was a little bit brighter. Okay, but other than that, I'd say they pretty much look the same. Again, I'm just like an amateur, so maybe you beg to differ. But the only difference I noticed was the coloration. The sign looked a little bit lighter with the L lens. It looked a little more saturated, a little more like orangish with the newer lens. But I think that actually looks more natural, the second one. Okay, right, so here's that first photo again, just zoomed in to 100%. So the L lens, and then you see the newer photo right here with the newer lens, and it is pretty much the same. Again, just the coloration looks a little more orangish on the newer lens, which I think is actually what my eye sees. I think a little different for different people. But otherwise, I can still see the detail of the signpost, the sign itself, and they both look pretty sharp. That's standing from 10 meters away. I really think they look the same. Okay, now the second set of photos, same sign. I'm just standing much farther back, 20 meters back. So that's like 65 feet, right? So that's pretty far back. And I'm at 200 millimeter focal length, right? So zoomed in for this lens, this is the old L lens, all the way, 200 millimeters. I am using IS, image stabilization, and a pretty fast shutter speed, so it's pretty steady, even though it's handheld. It's handheld, all right? And it looks crisp, looks clear, beautiful background blur. I think it's nice. Of course it should be. It's the L lens, right? I think it's a very clear photo. Looks very good. Now, let's look at the new lens. All right, so again, 200 millimeter focal length. Of course, the ISO is going to be different because this lens doesn't go to f4. This lens only goes to 5.6. So the ISO will be different to compensate for the lighting. Also, the background blur is a little bit different, right? The black background blur was a little more blurry in the old lens because it was at f4. All right, this one's at f5.6. So that's probably the reason. But otherwise, I think they look the same. All right, let's look at the detail. Okay, so this is using the old L lens, still same photo, just cropped and set at 100%. And you can see that scuff mark by the word end, right before that E, right? You can see the scuff mark by that bottom bolt. Look at the detail in the wooden post. Look at the detail in the metal post, that discoloration of the paint, like it's all there, all right? And here's the newer lens. I think it's also all still there, right? The same markings I just talked about, you can see them. They are pretty darn clear, right? And this one is just as sharp. Its ISO is higher, but the aperture is smaller, so it pretty much it's like a wash, right? It looks just as sharp. Maybe the color fringing is a little worse on this one. Look at the edges of the words, of the lettering. Maybe a little purple fringing from the aberration. But I can't really notice. If you really zoom in, maybe, and if you have a trained eye, maybe. But from even this view, I don't think you can notice. I think they both look pretty good.
All right, so to sum things up, I'll give you the pros and cons and you'll have to make the decision yourself. The newer lens, much lighter, much more affordable, only about $500. Goes to 300 millimeter zoom, much better zoom, much faster focus. The older L lens, 2.8 f-stop, so better for low light, maybe if you're indoors. But this one is much heavier and very expensive. The new edition of this, $2,000, $2,500 easily. Maybe if you can get an old one, used, then maybe. But you be the judge. You judge from the pictures and let me know, am I right or am I wrong?